Thank you, Andre. And thank you to everyone at the Boston Ujima Project for all of your care and labor in, curating this series last month and this month, and also inviting me to be here with you tonight. I am joining you today from which is the indigenous name for the island of St. Croix. St. Croix is a U.S. territory, which is a modern day colony of the U.S. Empire. And so I greet you today from these lands and from these ancestors here, and with solidarity with our Palestinian kin who are commemorating the Nakba today. And so want to bring all of those sacred kin along with us in this journey today as we spend time together. And I also want to honor all of our righteous, fugitive ancestors, elders, teachers, and guides who have been resisting colonization and imperialism from the beginning of those things happening. So we gather today here in this space, and I'm so glad we began with ritual because that is such a core component of how the Black Mecca Project was birthed and how we continue to practice Black feminist fugitivity. So to get started, actually, as our invocation into this space, I'm going to read a poem from this book called Maroon Choreography. It's by Fahima Ife. And the poem I'm going to read today is called We Communicate Together in a Language That Does Not Speak. We communicate together in a language that does not speak, but understood perfectly. We plunge into the negative ecstasy of radio, an enriching emptiness, a resonating quiet. It is not weightlessness we are in, as much as a channel, ephemeral connecting space, the ecstasy of communication, now an obscene gesture. Our sacred grounds, was it ever, is no longer secret. We want our hidden, glistening back, and simultaneously, it is disappearing, our ineffable blackness. So we give thanks to Fahima Ife for this gift in the book Maroon Choreography, a gift of poems and essays. And I'll be sure to share that for the notes as well, Arifa. So welcome into this space of really just exploring the practice of embodying Black feminist fugitivity. That's something that we have been up to at the Black Mecca Project for almost 5 years now. And I want to just begin before we go a little bit further, actually also with inviting you into some breath work. And so this will be a simple practice. And before you even do anything different, just begin to notice your body, right? Just notice how you are right now. Notice how you feel. Notice if you can feel. And then we're just going to invite a little bit deeper breath. And I encourage you to be kind to your body and be in sync with your body, that this breathing is going to look different and feel different for each of us. We're actually going to take 7 inhales and exhales together. Well, you can all, uh, what's that? Is that a request? Okay. Yes, and let's make sure we're muted, just so particularly as we get into this practice, you all can hear me. So yes, just again, we're just bringing some attention, some awareness to our bodies, inviting them to fully be a part of this experience. And when you're ready, just begin to take a little bit deeper inhale and a little bit longer exhale. And I won't count these out, but just see if you can do 7 of those, and then I'll bring us back together. And as you're breathing, just notice just a moment to become more present with our bodies, with ourselves, with each other. And maybe you're getting close to 6 or 7 at this point. Hmm. And maybe there's some movements your body wants to make. So if there are, feel free. My body is wanting a couple little shoulder rolls here. Maybe you want some more dramatic movement if you're, especially if you're off camera. And again, just notice what's happening in your body right now with that invitation of breath. Whatever's happening, we just want to welcome it. We want to just be present with it. There's no right or wrong or should or shouldn't. It just is. And so maybe there's one or two of you who might want to just say a word or two about, yeah, how you're feeling at the moment, either in the chat or someone wants to come, wants to verbally share. Yeah, just a word or two about where you're at right now, how you're feeling. Hmm. Some folks are holding some anxiety and grief, some feeling relaxed, calm, sore, tight, centered, some additional relief to be able to take in and release more. Lovely. Thank you. And I appreciate the responses. It's part of our practice as well, right? It's call and response. So really appreciate you all stepping in. Some relaxed, some parts numb. Yes. Thank you all. Thank you all. So that's part of what we're up to today, right? We're going to continue to be in a practice of feeling ourselves, right? And connecting with ourselves and connecting with each other. And I have an invitation for how we might do some of that. That also brings in some of the rich experimentation that we've been doing with the Black Mecca Project as the Black Mecca Project. And so I'm going to get ready in just a moment to share my screen. And I have an experiment that I want us to try here together. I think I'm just calling it like a visual embodiment exercise. You may even think about it as a visual meditation. It's going to take about 4.5 minutes. So feel free to like get comfy wherever you are, but make sure you can see your screen. You might want to have something to write with, some paper and something to write with in case there's something you want to jot down. As you're coming out of this experience, but that's up to you. And then once we do come out, we will have a few minutes to just have some solo time, whether you want to reflect or you want to draw or you want to write, that'll be up to you. And then we'll have a few folks, if you're willing, to share a little bit about your experience. And so as we prepare to go into this visual embodiment exercise, let me get my screen share going here. I'm going to invite you to watch this slideshow that I pulled together. There's no sound, so this is going to be a silent time. And I want you to resist the urge to try to like fully take in all that you're going to experience here. And instead, I want to invite you to be with the sensation and the feeling that comes up in your body as you are experiencing what you see on the screen. And so again, this is a practice of like being really in our bodies and looking to our other sources of wisdom, which can include our sensation and our feeling. And so this visual slideshow is an invitation into deeper feeling. So like I said, it's going to be about 4 minutes. Get comfy and just allow yourself to be with this invitation and be with your senses and your emotions. And you might also notice a few familiar faces. So here we go. All right. So if you'd like to, again, you can just we're just going to take like a minute or two. If you feel inspired to draw or write, or just to sit with, like, what sensations and emotions did you come in touch with as you participated in this visual embodiment exercise? So just take a minute or so solo, and then would love to hear from a few folks, maybe in the chat or verbally. Hmm, thank you. Is it Teonia? I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name, but thank you for your contribution there in the chat. Yeah, would love to hear from folks again, especially senses or emotion. What was happening for you?
I'll share. Hi everyone again, Brittany. I was trying to figure out how to listen with my eyes, and I don't know how to better say that, but I at first I was like, oh, there's no sound, and I'm like, okay, but how do I hear it? And it really required me to be still, in ways that I think that I'm not generally. Um, so yeah, I can't further process that, but like listening with my eyes.
Hmm. Thank you, Brittany. Denise Shante?
Yeah, yeah, thanks for the listening with the eyes. That's a beautiful way to put it, and describe what I was feeling too. I was like, found myself like oscillating between expansion and contraction, like in my chest. I kept moving between a few different feelings that I didn't anticipate. One was desire, like I wanted to drop into these experiences that I was looking at. Another was like some guilt and shame for not knowing, like, oh, I don't know all of these references. Like I'm processing intellectual classism and other spaces of judgment in a lot of parts of my life. So I'm like noticing some things that are coming up for not, reading all the stuff, knowing all the language. Um, and the last one, like returning to trust. And I wrote down what you mentioned about sensation as a source of wisdom. And I'm like, if I'm sensing these things and feeling these things, there's something in the desire that can still carry me through, and something that I know, that's also present here.
Hmm. Yes, thank you for that authentic share, Denise Shante. Appreciate you. Lisa, I also see your hand, and then Isis.
Yeah, similar. I felt like I just saw like a lot of elements, like earth elements, fire dreams in the title. And also wanting more, thinking about the experiences that the previous person said. Like there are so many like warm faces and like smiles and just like moments. And I was like, oh, I really want to like be included in that. So it just also really has me thinking about community and what belonging means to me, within space, but also, across space and place. Um, and also just like the hunger to want to know more when it comes to like all the resources that were shared. It's like, oh, I was trying to write that down, trying to write that down, trying to write that title down. So yeah, it was really beautiful. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. And I will make sure y'all have the link that you can spend some time with it later. Isis, let's close with you for this piece.
Yeah, I was also challenged to sit completely still, and just absorb all the beauty that was in front of me. And I think I also noticed like a weird mix between a feeling of euphoria and expansiveness, and then similarly like a contracting, but more so in a sense of grief and loss. And I think just seeing Black people in space together, particularly prioritizing rest, prioritizing joy and dancing, really filled my heart up. Um, and then I also know the context that the pandemic unfortunately made this space close. And so I think I'm feeling the grief of how beautiful the space was, and the physical space, but that expansiveness is coming back as I'm seeing how the Black Mecca Project has continued to evolve. And it reminds me and grounds me in the fact that fugitivity far long preceded the Black Mecca Project, and it will continue, and that fugitivity is a practice and it's not necessarily rooted in anyone's space or any physical location, but more so how the people who practice it engage with one another and with themselves. So I think I was just hit with all of that at once. Yeah.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you all so much for sharing. Like I appreciate like the authenticity and like sitting with the complexity of feeling and sensation, and also like, you know, taking the risk that like we don't have to resolve that, right? We get to be inside of all of that feeling, right? And so our dear ancestor Audre Lorde, right, tells us that like I feel, therefore I can be free. And so um, Audre Lorde is definitely a dear ancestor of the Black Mecca Project, someone that we look to often. And this project was actually started in Atlanta in 2019, although it has become much more expansive. And it was really started as um, a community project, right? That came from community, right? It's always been birthed from community and been responsive to community. And so part of where it came from was really as both a critique of things that were happening in Atlanta, particularly around the displacement of poor and working class Black folks in the city of Atlanta, as private investors and others, including the city itself, were displacing residents. And so we were hearing and seeing and experiencing. Oh, okay. Um, the ways in which folks were really longing for space and longing to have a space to really practice the things that we say we want. And so the Black Mecca Project came into being in August 2019 as a Black liberation lab. And we were actually initially did not expect it to be a physical space, but we actually came into through a relationship and community, came into a physical space that we call the sanctuary. And so what you're seeing behind me is my background is one corner of that sanctuary, and you saw some of that as well throughout the slideshow. And so not only was it a critique of the ways in which the city of Atlanta was not actually embodying what we thought was the full potential of what it means to be a Black Mecca, right? And that the folks that we thought who should be centered in a so-called Black Mecca should be the folks who have been building that Black Mecca for generations. And what we saw is that was Black women, queer and trans folks, poor and working class folks, right, are really like the heartbeat of Atlanta. Yet the kind of narrative and the power base is often reflected through the priorities of the elite. And so this was back in 2018 and 2019, and we see that continue today, as many of you have probably been watching from afar what's happening with the Stop Cop City campaign in Atlanta. And so we wanted to not only critique, right, what was happening in our beloved city, right, we wanted to also create the space so that we could actually practice and embody something otherwise, right? And this is how we really came into relationship with Black feminist fugitivity and maroonage. And so for us, and I'm quoting from a recent journal article published by the Acme Journal, and I'll share that as well, about fugitivity as a method. So marginage therefore not only entails a critique of dominant spatial arrangements, but it's also creating entirely new spatial relations that do not draw on modern spatial praxis as the norm. So for us, it was about world building, right? It wasn't just about critiquing, right? It was also about like, so what is it that we actually want, and how do we start to like build that and practice that together now? And the space made that even more possible than what we originally imagined. And so for us, we realized that, and this is also a quote, that fugitivity is generative. It enacts or rehearses alternative politics, social relations, and forms of cultural expression to project Black lives and Black spaces beyond the necropolitical logics of dominant geography, right? And so we knew from our Black feminists for mothers and for community members that something else was possible, and that if we were going to experience that, it was going to be because we created it for ourselves. And we also knew that this had to really be rooted in practice, that this wasn't just about theory, right? It wasn't just about study. It was really, it started as like a conversation, right? A dialogue, right? In the Black Mecca Project. And like, how do we actually be in practice together? And so I'm so grateful that the opening question that the Ujima Project offered was about ritual, because we really grounded every part of what we did through ritual. And we were blessed that one of our core team members, Neve Sankofa, really stood in the gap and really supported us and supported the space to ensure that we were in integrity, right, in terms of our ritual practices and honoring our ancestors and honoring our elders and energetically cleansing and clearing the space, right, and setting powerful intentions for the space and for our relationships. And so that has always been a part of our placemaking practice, which is what we came to embody at the Black Mecca Project, particularly in the sanctuary. And so the sanctuary at Westview on the west side of Atlanta was our first experiment. And as Isis alluded to, unfortunately and unexpectedly, like a lot of places, we had to let that go in 2020 when the pandemic came along, as we recognized that it was not going to be safe for quite some time for us to gather together in large groups. And so we let that space go. And so the project pivoted, right? Like just like Black folks, and particularly Black women and gender expansive folks, queer folks are always doing, right? Like when the conditions change, right? We're responsive to the conditions and responsive to the needs and desires of our communities. And so we have been pivoting since that time over these last few years. And so some of our other invitations and activations that have come along in the last few years include our study group and practice group, which is known as We Need More Fugitives. And that title has been lovingly borrowed with consent from Dr. Rob Malika Imhotep, who you will hear from next week if you come back here to the Ujima Project Liberation Study Hall. We wanted to have a space where we could be in relationship with various texts and various embodied ways of knowing how to practice, continue to practice fugitivity and maroonage, right, in the present. And so our study group meets twice a month, and we have a few of our study group members here tonight as well. And so that's another way that we are in this practice together and study together. We also have created over the last few years what we call the Petite Maroonage Residency. And this again is in response to what we're hearing from our folks, right, from community, that space was not only about physical space, right, and being able to come together. It's also about like spaciousness, right, like mental space, emotional space, psychological space, right, to rest, to dream, to create, to strategize, to integrate, right, to process grief. Particularly over the last several years, right, particularly for those of us engaged in social justice and social movement work, right, there's just been so much to be with, right, so much for our bodies and our minds and our hearts to be with over these last several years. And so a lot of folks we're talking about like space, like I just need space, like I need space to just feel and think and like create and to rest, right? And so we listened, you know, and we co-created with folks, and this residency is one way that we're doing that. And so we invite Black women and gender expansive folks who are creatives and cultural workers and spiritualists, right, into a 1-month residency here in St. Croix, the U.S. Virgin Islands, which has its own maroon territory and historic maroon lineage here on this land. And folks are here for a month to really connect with this land, with this place, with the people and the ancestors here, right? And to have some time to really rest and digest. And ultimately, if they feel called, right, to create, right, to really be in a practice of radical imagination and world building that they can take back with them to their communities and continue, you know, the work that they're already engaged in. And so that is another activation and experiment that we have been offering over the last couple of years. And we have more things and possibilities on the way. but kind of the core principles and practices haven't changed, right? It's about space and place, right? It's about ritual. It's about both study and practice, right? It's about like really being embodied, right, in our bodies with our senses and our emotions, right, and honoring that as a source of wisdom, a source of leading, right. And so these have always been some of the pieces that have been key to our experience at the Black Mecca Project. And so our intention is to keep experimenting, to keep being responsive, to continue to be in this kind of call and response with each other, and to continue to learn from our elders and ancestors, right, who have been practicing fugitivity and marronage in various ways for hundreds of years. And so this is our, present day attempt to ground inside of the vision and the values that we have, while also continuing this lineage in a way that can take us all closer to the liberation that so many of us are longing for Black folks, for Indigenous folks, and for folks of color all across the world. So I'm going to pause there in the
Can you hear me?
interest of time and allow for a few questions. I'm not sure what's with the audio. Are y'all hearing that?
Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me by any chance?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, it's 7:06, so we could definitely open it up for questions or anything like that. And yeah, for about 10 minutes. If anybody have a question, please raise your hand or just go off mute.
I have a question. Oh, is there a question in the chat?
Yeah, there's one in the chat.
Okay, let's go with that. Then my question was very similar. Thank you, Zuri.
Okay. What do you feel is the Black Mecca Project's legacy? I think it's a great question. And I know that I don't hold that answer alone, because the Black Mecca Project and because fugitivity is a communal practice. I think that's a question for us to answer collectively. And I think that we'll be doing some of that this summer. And so, as I mentioned, the Black Mecca Project will be commemorating being 5 years old this summer, which is still very much a baby, and yet also is something to celebrate and honor, particularly given what the last 5 years in particular has been like, and how so many things happen that we're not, we couldn't have imagined, and how we've had to pivot to continue to honor what the original intentions of the project are. And so I would love to take that question, with us, Zuri, into the summer as we are able to gather with more folks again in person, to see what that legacy is. And also, I hope that it's continuing. I hope that it's really just beginning. Again, 5 years is still very, very, very young, and I think there's a lot more for us to practice together. And I'm happy to take another question. And if not, I could also close this out with a practice. I know I went through that very quickly, but hopefully I gave you just a sense of some of the things we've been experimenting with. There's a lot more that I could say, but in the interest of time, I stop. But so I'm happy to take a question, or like I said, I could close this with a practice.
Yeah, if anybody has a question, please.
I have a question. So I feel like when we were viewing the slideshow, a lot of folks touched on desire. And I guess I'm curious what your perspective is. Like, despite it kind of being in the name, I think practicing fugitivity alone is very hard. So I was wondering if you could speak more to your experience of that, and maybe some other rituals or practices that can fill some of that desire we feel when we're not able to be in communal space.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Isis. And I love it because I think it really aligns with the practice. I was going to invite us into a centering practice as our close. And I think for me, I'll just speak from my experience. I think somatic practice, and this practice in particular that we're going to step into, a centering practice, has been a way for me, particularly through these years where it hasn't been and often still isn't safe for us to be together in person, or not safe for all of us to be together, right? Like I said, I wish we were all together right now in person somewhere outside. And I feel like the centering practice is a way to be present with myself and also like really call in and like feel for the folks that I'm in community with, right? And also feel for like my ancestors and guides, right? And so even when I've not been able to physically be with folks, right? And then also, like y'all know, especially these last several years, right? Life be lifing, right? And so people have good intentions and want to be in community, right? But like get pulled away by like real life stuff, right? Like people they have to take care of or taking care of themselves, or conditions, right, that are keeping them from having the type of like energy, right, that they might want to have to be more fully present. And so honoring and acknowledging that like there is kind of this to me, I'm learning about the ebb and flow, right, of relationship and community as we are all like surviving the conditions that we're in collectively. And so what does it mean to stay connected, even as folks have to flow in and out? And so this practice of centering helps me to feel that in my own body. And then also helps me to be in touch with my own longings and desires, which then enables me to make clear requests to folks about how I want to be in relationship and in community. So in the last few minutes we have, if y'all are into it, we could just do a brief centering practice. And some of you may have done this before. If you have any experience with embodiment practice. Were you all trying to say something at the farm?
Oh yeah, yeah, you can if there's no more questions. Yeah, if
Okay.
there's no more, definitely, yeah. Please.
All right. Let's do it. Let's do it. So this practice, centering practice, comes from a lineage of embodiment. I've been most supported, at least in recent years, by the Embodiment Institute and also by my teacher and mentor, Mawalisa Thomas Adeyemo, who's actually there in Massachusetts. So you can do this practice seated or standing or even laying down. I'm going to stand up. That's just what my body is feeling at the moment. I've been sitting here for a minute. But whatever works for your body, go for it. And our intention here is, again, we're just coming back to feeling, right? And being with what is sensation in our body. So just allow yourself, one thing that might help is just allow yourself to kind of just notice your weight, right? Just kind of like drop in to yourself. Feel the weightiness of your body, whether you're seated or standing. And again, we're just noticing and feeling for sensation. You might allow your awareness to move from top to bottom, bottom to top, noticing your length. This can be a place where we also relate to our dignity, our inherent worth and dignity. And then just notice what it feels like to keep expanding your awareness in your body. Maybe now noticing yourself from left to right, the width. So that might be ankle to ankle or hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder, ear to ear. And this can be an invitation to not only feel ourselves and feel our width, but also feel for our connections. So even in this space right now, even though we're on Zoom, can you feel for the other folks in this space right now? Maybe just notice the sides of your bodies. Maybe just pick one part, the sides of your arms, and feel for connection. And it's okay if this is unfamiliar. We're just feeling. If nothing else makes sense, you're just feeling. And then just bring that awareness to your back body. Your full back all the way from the bottom of your heels all the way up to the back of your head. And know that there are energies, maybe entities at your back, including previous versions of yourself, everything that has become before this moment that's at your back. And you can just feel forward now. Again, the invitation is to try to move from one dimension to the next, right? Without losing it, right? So although we're moving through, we're not letting go of our length or our width or connection with our backs. But just moving through now to our fronts, side of our bodies. And then just drop your attention into your center, to your lower abdomen. And this can be a place where we feel not only a physical center, but also really check in and feel for that longing, that desire. What are you truly longing for? What do you want to commit yourself to? And as you leave this space, like, how might you begin to organize yourself, organize your length, your width, your depth in service to that longing? So if you want to just close the practice with a hand on heart, one other hand on the belly. Just some gratitude to each of you, gratitude to our bodies, gratitude to our longings, and to all of the lineages and wisdom teachers, right, that are with each of us here in this space and beyond. I hope that this invites you into more practice of fugitivity and maroonage. And if you are interested in, practicing with us, feel free to check us out at our website or on social media, Black Mecca Project. And again, thank you, Boston Ujima Project, for your beautiful curation of this series.